So a friend of mine asked me to create a list of the best guitar makers in history and to assign them a rating based on the sound of their guitars. My name is Alberto, and he said, Alberto, I'd love you to make an Albertone Sound Rating list of the best guitars in history. I found the proposal interesting. The first thing I thought was that indeed I've been in contact with guitar makers and playing guitars of all kinds almost non-stop since I was 13 years old. That means more than 35 years playing guitars built by guitar makers, good guitar makers, top guitar makers also. During this time, I've had the opportunity to try guitars made by some of the greatest guitar makers in history from all over the world. So I might be someone perhaps interesting to know and qualified to share which ones I found to be the best. However, I didn't want this list to be based only on my personal opinion. I wanted to look for a list that had a certain level of consensus among guitar professional players, guitar makers and collectors. A list where, with small variations, all the big names were included. Although I know always in a list like this one, there will always be names that some consider should be there. Additionally, I decided that the list would include only guitar makers who are no longer with us. I didn't want to include the great contemporary guitar makers of today because I think it would generate more controversy, and because some of them are good friends of mine. I didn't want to hear comments like, of course, you included them because they are your friends and so on. A very important aspect of this list is that it is based on guitars I've personally had the chance to play. The best guitars I ever played. As you know, each guitar is unique, even if it's made by the same guitar maker. Additionally, guitar makers go through periods of great work and others that are not as strong. Many times I've played two guitars from the same maker. One was marvelous, while the other didn't appeal so much to me at all. Even when the guitars were built just a few years apart. There are many possible reasons for this. Maybe the guitar wasn't actually built by the guitar maker, even though it bears their level. It could be that the guitar maker changed their construction system, used lower quality materials out of economic necessity, or simply didn't think their work would have such a lasting impact in the future. So someone asking for a cheap guitar and he made it, he had that necessity at that time. We are talking about guitars sometimes made 150 years ago. We don't know the situation at that time with some guitar makers. There are countless reasons why a guitar, even from a great master, might not meet, let's say, expectations. In many cases, collectors buy guitars only based on the level. But having the level of a famous guitar maker doesn't necessarily guarantee that a specific guitar will sound very good. Consistency in quality also is a value that some guitar makers have, but others don't. Often even they themselves don't know for sure why one guitar turned out exceptional while another didn't. For this reason, someone might think that the guitar maker should be higher on this list because the guitar they played from them was extraordinary. But my rating, the Albertone Sound Rating that you will see here, is based, I repeat, on the guitars I've played throughout my life. The opposite could also happen. You might think a guitar maker should rank lower because the guitar you tried from them wasn't particularly special. Every guitar is unique and different, as I said before. With that said, let's start the list, going from number 20 to what I consider number 1. So number 20 is Manuel de la Chica, a Granada guitar maker, with an Albertone rating of 7.6. The number 19th is Modesto Borreguero, Albertone rating 7.8. Number 18th, Jesus Belezar Garcia, with an Albertone rating of 7.8. Now 3 guitar makers with the same score. Number 17th, Robert Boucher, Albertone rating 7.9. Number 16, Jose Luis Romanillos, Albertone rating 7.9. Miguel Rodriguez and the family, Miguel Rodriguez Benedito, the father, the sons Miguel Rodriguez Serrano and Rafael Rodriguez Serrano. They have an Albertone rating 7.9. Now 6 guitar makers with the same rating. Number 14th, Manuel Ramirez, Albertone rating of 8. Number 13, Vicente Arias, Albertone rating of 8. Number 12, Francisco Simplicio, with an Albertone rating of 8 also. Number 11, the master of Francisco Simplicio, Enrique Garcia, Albertone rating of 8. We are now inside the 10 best guitar makers in history. Number 10th, Hernández y Aguado, Santiago Manuel Hernández and Victoriano Aguado Rodriguez, Albertone rating of 8. Number 9, Domingo Esteso, with an Albertone rating of 8 too. Let's continue with number 8, Hermann Hauser II, with an Albertone rating of 8.2. Number 7th, Manuel Reyes, with an Albertone rating of 8.3. Number 6, Ignacio Fleta, with an Albertone rating of 8.4. 5th position, here we find with an Albertone rating of 8.7, what I consider the greatest French luthier in history, Daniel Friedrich. We now enter the highest 4 positions in history. The following names and some of the top 10 made guitars that are a sublime experience to play. The mere act of plucking an open string, a chord, or a musical phrase on one of these guitars is quite amazing. It's an experience that stays with you, replaying the moment in your mind for like hours. It is a really special feeling. A chord you've played hundreds of times, just an E major or E minor, let's say, sounds like entirely different on these guitars. There are harmonics, qualities of sound that make it feel like you are hearing it for the first time in that way. For many and for me, the sound of a traditional guitar is the most beautiful sound humanity has created. And these guitars are the ultimate example of that enormous beauty. Number 4, Hermann Hauser I, with an Albertone rating of 8.9. I had the chance to play several ones, and I especially remember years ago I had the chance to play a Hermann Hauser I guitar that belonged to Andres Segovia, the guitarist Andres Segovia. It was an experience I will never forget. It sounds left me reflecting on that moment for a long time. Number 3, Marcelo Barbero, with an Albertone rating of 8.9. This name might surprise many. Marcelo Barbero, born in 1904 in Madrid and passing in 1956, died at just 52 years old. In his final years, he made mind-blowing guitars, imagining what he could have achieved in his 60s or 70s. It's a speculation, but he might have been even better. I mean, it's a pity that he died so young. The first time I played a Marcelo Barbero was in Tokyo, one by him from the 50s, and I didn't know much about Marcelo Barbero. But that day, after playing this guitar, I was thinking about its sounds and the feeling out of it for several days. Since that day, I was completely in love of the guitars of this guitar maker. Number 2, Santos Hernandez, with an Albertone rating of 8.9. Some guitar professionals, guitarists, collectors and dealers that I met have told me that the best sound they've ever heard came from a Santos Hernandez guitar. Besides its sublime sound, I also loved his rosettes. I consider it the best in history, beautiful, balanced and full of character. But anyway, here we talk just about sound, and I consider for that Santos Hernandez second in history. So let's go for the number one. As many of you already guessed, number one is Antonio de Torres, with an Albertone rating of 10. Antonio de Torres receives a perfect 10 because actually I've taken him as the reference for all others. So he's the 10 qualification. You may think his fame comes from being the father of the modern guitar, or the one who unified ideas to create the dimensions and characteristics we know the guitar as we know today. But we need to talk about the most important aspect in guitar, which is the sound, because the guitar, after all, is a musical instrument. Antonio de Torres also produced and created the most beautiful, expressive, and sublime sound ever achieved. We don't know what he had in his head, what he focused on that we don't focus on now today. Nobody knows. Maybe his ability to understand the wood, or perhaps he simply had a talent and feelings and understanding of the instrument that only he had. But nobody since him never reached the quality and the beauty of sound he was able to achieve. So yes, Torres has a rating of 10. When I see a guitar by Torres, not all of them, I repeat, but some of the Torres I played, the thought that comes to my mind is, that's it, this is the pinnacle, a person cannot make a better guitar than this. It feels like the perfect guitar, one that stands on a completely different level from the rest. There's this, and then everything else. You might say, well, why wouldn't it be possible to make a better guitar? Of course it could happen. Humans are always evolving in many aspects, and maybe in time it will. But there's the thing, maybe humans aren't always evolving. There are ways of seeing, kinds of knowledge, ways of living and working, of viewing life and approaching a craft that only exists in a certain time and never return. I believe that the way they approached construction, some of the guitar makers at that time, the clarity they had about where to focus their efforts is something that may have been lost forever. So when we wonder if something better might be made in the future, we can say sure, who knows, maybe. We cannot say for sure that it won't happen, but more than 150 years have passed since Torres built those guitars, and they still haven't been surpassed. Well, there is the list. I know that in the future I'll probably change this list with new experiences, with new guitars I try. I'll see a new guitar by one of these makers or by someone else, and I'll adjust the order or include someone who isn't on it now. But as of today, this is the list. 16 Spanish, 2 Germans and 2 French. That is the list that I consider to be the best guitar makers in history. Remember, not counting those who are among us today. Hope you find it interesting. I will be very pleased to know what is your list of these best guitar makers in history, in your opinion. You can write that list on the comments. Thank you.